Most people talk too much. They talk because they're afraid of being misunderstood. They talk because they're afraid of silence. They fill the air with noise because they fear the emptiness that might come if they don't. But here's the truth. Silence is powerful. It holds more weight than any conversation could ever hope to achieve. Silence has a deeper resonance, a far-reaching intensity that words can only mimic. Silence allows us to hear ourselves, to become aware of what we are truly thinking, feeling, and believing. When we allow ourselves the space for silence, we move beyond the clamor of the world around us and connect with something much more profound, our true essence. The reason so many people avoid silence is because it's uncomfortable. It forces us to confront ourselves. It strips away the distractions, the external noise, and exposes what lies underneath. Our fears, doubts, desires, and often our insecurities. But within that discomfort lies a treasure. It's the treasure of self-awareness, of inner peace, of personal mastery. And so we live in a world full of noise, chatter, and constant external validation. A world where talking too much is seen as normal, even expected. But there's an alternative. There's a deeper way of being. A way that requires more restraint, more control, and more inner strength. This is the way of silence, the way of restraint, the way of self-mastery, the uncomfortable truth. You see, the more we talk, the more we reveal about ourselves. The more we talk, the more we lose control. When we speak without thinking, when we fill the air with unnecessary words, we become vulnerable. We open ourselves up to being judged, misunderstood, or misinterpreted. And yet, we do it anyway. We speak because we feel the need to be heard. We speak because we want validation, approval, and connection. We crave attention, but often without realizing that in doing so, we give away our power. Words are not neutral. They carry meaning. They carry energy. Each word we speak has an impact, whether we're aware of it or not. Every sentence, every statement, every conversation sends out ripples into the world. And once those ripples are sent, we can't take them back. That's why silence is so powerful. Silence allows us to regain control. It allows us to hold our power. When we choose silence, we choose not to react impulsively to every thought, every emotion, every external pressure. Instead, we allow ourselves the space to think before we speak, to reflect before we act. The truth is, silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean passivity. Quite the opposite. Silence requires strength. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to resist the urge to speak, to hold back when every part of you wants to let your voice be heard. Silence is not the absence of thought. It's the ability to think more deeply. And that deep thinking, that stillness of mind, gives you the power to act with intention rather than reaction. It allows you to move with purpose, not because you're driven by external pressures or a need to prove yourself, but because you are rooted in your own inner truth. The power of restraint. Restraint is a form of strength. It's the ability to control your impulses, to refrain from reacting in the heat of the moment. It's the art of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. This is something that many people fail to understand. They believe that strength comes from speaking up, from asserting themselves, from being loud and forceful. But true strength lies in the ability to restrain yourself. It lies in your capacity to remain calm, composed, and deliberate in your actions. Think about the great leaders throughout history, the ones who commanded respect, who inspired change, who made a lasting impact. They weren't the ones who shouted the loudest or talked the most. They were the ones who knew when to speak, when to act, and when to stay silent. Take the example of Socrates. He was a master of restraint. He didn't simply give answers or lecture others on philosophy. Instead, he asked questions. He encouraged others to think for themselves, to question their beliefs, and to seek truth on their own. He understood that true wisdom comes not from speaking endlessly, but from listening, reflecting, and engaging in deep, thoughtful dialogue. But Socrates also knew when to remain silent. When faced with the prospect of execution, he didn't plead for his life. He didn't beg for mercy. He remained calm, composed, and resolute. His silence in that moment was not a sign of weakness, but a sign of inner strength. He understood that true freedom comes from within, not from external circumstances. If this is all making sense to you, hit the subscribe button and join the paradox theory. Thank you. Restraint is not about suppressing your feelings or denying your desires. It's about choosing to act from a place of inner clarity rather than being swept away by the forces around you. It's about choosing to be deliberate in your actions, to make decisions based on your true values, not on what others expect or demand from you. In a world that constantly encourages us to speak up, to be heard, and to assert ourselves, restraint can seem like an alien concept. But the truth is, restraint is the ultimate form of self-mastery. It is the ability to resist the constant pressure to speak, to perform, to prove yourself. It is the ability to sit in stillness and know that you are enough just as you are. The silence within. The most powerful silence is the one that comes from within. It's the silence of the mind, the quiet that arises when you stop chasing after external validation and begin to connect with your own inner truth. This silence isn't something that can be forced or manufactured. It comes from cultivating a deep sense of self-awareness, from getting comfortable with your own thoughts and emotions, and from learning to sit with discomfort. Many people fear this silence because it forces them to confront what lies beneath the surface of their thoughts. It forces them to confront their insecurities, their fears, and their unresolved emotions. It's easier to fill the void with noise, to distract ourselves from what's uncomfortable, than to sit with the silence and face what's within. But it's in this silence that we find the answers we've been searching for. It's in the stillness of the mind that we come to understand who we truly are. In the silence, we become more aware of our own patterns, our own thoughts, our own habits. We begin to see the ways in which we've been living on autopilot, reacting to life instead of creating it. When we cultivate inner silence, we begin to align ourselves with our true essence. We stop seeking validation from others and start listening to our own inner voice. We stop reacting to the world around us and start responding with intention. We stop living in fear of being misunderstood, and instead we embrace our own truth. This inner silence is not a void. It is a space of profound clarity and insight. It is the place where we can hear the whispers of our soul, the gentle nudges that guide us toward our highest potential. It is where we find the courage to be authentic, to stand in our power, and to create the life we truly desire. To truly master yourself, you must first master your thoughts. Your thoughts shape your reality. They dictate your actions, your emotions, and the way you interact with the world. And yet, most people allow their thoughts to control them. They react to their thoughts as if they are facts, as if they are truths. They allow their minds to run wild, to chase after every distraction, every fear, every desire. But true mastery comes when you learn to control your thoughts, when you learn to sit with them in silence, to observe them without judgment, and to let them pass without becoming attached. This is the essence of mindfulness, the practice of observing your thoughts without getting caught up in them. It's about creating space between stimulus and response so that you can choose how you want to react, rather than being dictated by your automatic reactions. When you cultivate this inner stillness, You begin to detach from the noise of the world. You stop identifying with your thoughts and start seeing them for what they are, temporary mental events that come and go. You stop letting your thoughts define you and start defining yourself. This process takes time and discipline. It requires the ability to be still, to sit in silence, and to observe your mind without becoming attached to it. It requires the willingness to face your fears, your insecurities, and your desires without allowing them to control you. But in doing so, you unlock a new level of self-mastery. You become the master of your mind rather than its servant. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. You move through the world with intention, purpose, and clarity. Conclusion: embracing the power of silence. The world may be loud, but you don't have to be. You don't have to fill the air with noise, with meaningless chatter, with words that only serve to distract and disempower you. You don't have to seek validation from others or prove yourself through your words. Instead, you can embrace the power of silence. You can choose restraint, control, and inner mastery. You can choose to speak when it's necessary and remain silent when it's not. You can choose to listen, to reflect, and to create space for your own thoughts and feelings. Silence is not empty, it's full of potential. In silence you find your power. In silence you find your truth. In silence you find the freedom to be yourself. So the next time you feel the urge to speak, to fill the air with noise, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this coming from a place of truth? Or is it simply a reaction to fear, insecurity, or external pressure? And if it's not necessary, choose silence. Choose the power of restraint. Choose the strength to remain calm, composed, and deliberate in your actions. Because in the silence you are free. And that, my friend, is where your true power lies. The weight of words. Words have a weight to them, a gravity that can either pull us down or lift us up. When we speak, we release energy into the world, shaping our environment, our relationships, and our own inner state. But the more we speak, the more we risk becoming overwhelmed by the sheer volume of words we put out. Words can be like arrows. Once they are released, they cannot be taken back. They can wound, mislead, or deceive, but they can also heal, inspire, and transform. The question is, do we speak with intention, or do we simply fill the air with noise to avoid facing the uncomfortable silence within? In our world of social media, constant communication, and digital noise, we are inundated with words every day. Most of these words are fleeting, momentary. They pass by without leaving any lasting impact. But there is power in slowing down and considering the weight of every word before we speak. When we speak without thought, we deplete our energy, our mental clarity, and our emotional stability. But when we choose our words carefully, we can direct our energy in a way that creates real, meaningful change. True strength lies in the ability to hold back, to not speak when you don't need to pause and reflect before you react. When we learn to embrace this discipline, we begin to understand that every word has the potential to shape our destiny. Resisting the urge to speak. The urge to speak is natural. It's often driven by an impulse to be heard, to express ourselves, or to fill the void of silence with something, anything, that feels more comfortable than being alone with our thoughts. But this urge can be a trap. When we speak without restraint, we risk losing our sense of self. We begin to seek external validation instead of finding contentment in our own inner world. The desire to fill the silence can come from a deep-seated fear of rejection or a fear of confronting our own vulnerability. But what if the greatest act of courage is simply resisting the urge to speak? What if, instead of filling every moment with words, we chose to observe, to listen, to sit quietly with our thoughts? In this silence, we can confront the deeper fears and anxieties that drive our need for validation. We can begin to understand why we feel the need to fill the silence in the first place. Resisting the urge to speak is not about repression. It's about finding the courage to hold space for our thoughts and emotions without seeking external approval. It's about trusting that we are enough, even when we are silent. The power of listening. In our fast-paced world, listening has become a rare and precious skill. Everyone is so eager to speak, to share their opinions, that true listening has become a lost art. But listening is one of the most powerful tools we can cultivate. When we listen, we are not merely hearing words. We are attuning ourselves to the deeper currents of meaning that lie beneath the surface. Listening requires patience and attentiveness. It requires us to step outside of ourselves and focus completely on the other person. But listening is not only about others, it's also about listening to ourselves. In silence, we can hear the quiet voice within, the one that speaks the truth we often avoid. It is in this silence that we gain clarity, direction, and wisdom. By listening deeply, we open ourselves to new perspectives, new insights, and new ways of understanding. Listening allows us to learn, not only from others, but also from the stillness within us. True listening requires an openness of mind and heart. It requires the humility to accept that we don't have all the answers, that we can always learn and grow. And it requires the wisdom to know when to speak and when to remain silent, the path to inner peace. At the heart of all of this is the pursuit of inner peace. Silence, restraint, and self-mastery are not goals in themselves. They are tools that lead us to a deeper sense of peace within ourselves. True peace is not the absence of conflict or external noise. It is the ability to remain calm, centered, and grounded, no matter what is happening around us. Silence is the pathway to this inner peace. It is in the quiet moments when we allow ourselves to simply be that we come to terms with our own inner turbulence. In silence, we can observe our fears, anxieties, and insecurities without being swept away by them. The more we embrace silence, the more we cultivate a sense of calm that extends into every area of our lives. We become less reactive to the world around us, more deliberate in our actions, and more at ease with who we are. Silence and the cultivation of wisdom. Wisdom is not something that can be learned through words alone. It is not something that can be taught or explained in a book. Wisdom arises through experience, through reflection, and through the quiet moments when we allow our minds to settle and our hearts to open. In silence, we have the space to ask the difficult questions, to confront the parts of ourselves that we may be avoiding. Wisdom emerges not through constant chatter, but through the stillness that allows us to hear the answers that lie within. The wise person is not the one who speaks the most. It is the one who knows when to speak and when to listen. It is the one who understands that true wisdom is not about acquiring knowledge, but about cultivating the inner peace and clarity that allow us to see the world as it truly is. Silence teaches us the humility to recognize that we do not have all the answers. It teaches us that wisdom is not about knowing everything, but about knowing what matters. And what matters is the clarity of our mind, the strength of our spirit, and the purity of our intentions. Living in alignment with silence. Living in alignment with silence means choosing to prioritize inner peace over external validation, choosing restraint over reaction, and choosing reflection over mindless action. It means resisting the pressure to conform to the noise of the world and instead creating space for our own thoughts, desires, and insights to emerge. When we live in alignment with silence, we begin to operate from a place of deep inner knowing. We are no longer driven by external forces or the opinions of others. We act from a place of integrity, authenticity, and clarity. This is not to say that silence is always easy or that it is always the right course of action. There are times when we must speak, when we must assert ourselves and take action. But the key is knowing when to remain silent and when to speak. True self-mastery is the ability to navigate the world with grace and wisdom. Knowing when to be still and when to move forward, it is about living in harmony with the natural rhythms of life and allowing ourselves to flow with them rather than constantly resisting or forcing our way through the noise. The silence within us. The greatest source of silence is not the external world, it is the silence within us. We can find peace and stillness even in the midst of chaos, as long as we cultivate the inner capacity to remain centered. This inner silence is not a destination, but a continuous practice. It is something we must return to again and again, especially in moments of stress, uncertainty, or conflict. By cultivating a deep sense of inner silence, we create a sanctuary within ourselves, a place where we can retreat whenever the world becomes too overwhelming. In this inner silence, we reconnect with our true selves. We let go of the noise of the world and remember who we are at our core. And in this silence, we find our power, the strength found in silence. In our world that prioritizes constant motion and external expression, silence is often misunderstood as weakness or avoidance. But in reality, silence is an expression of great strength. To be silent in a world that demands constant chatter requires a deep sense of inner conviction. It's easy to speak when we're trying to prove something, when we feel the need to justify our existence, our thoughts, our beliefs. But to remain silent when every part of us wants to react, that is true strength. Silence is not an absence, it's a presence. It's a presence that holds power over our emotions, our impulses, and our actions. In the silence, we find the ability to pause, reflect, and choose how we respond, rather than reacting impulsively. When we embrace silence, we allow ourselves to be more deliberate in our choices. We stop being swept away by external pressures, and we begin to listen to our inner wisdom, the voice that knows what is best for us. This requires us to cultivate a deep sense of self-awareness. We must become attuned to our thoughts, our feelings, and our desires, not from a place of judgment or criticism, but from a place of acceptance and understanding. The strength found in silence is the strength of control, the ability to direct our energy with purpose and clarity. It is a power that cannot be measured by external noise, but by the peace we find within. The path to freedom through restraint. In a world that celebrates indulgence, freedom is often equated with the ability to do whatever we please. We are told that freedom is about having no boundaries, no restrictions. But true freedom is not about doing whatever we want. It's about choosing to act in alignment with our deepest values and desires. This discipline takes time to develop. It requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. At first, silence can feel awkward or even painful. We may feel a sense of restlessness or anxiety as we confront the emptiness that comes with silence. But as we persist, we begin to notice something. The discomfort fades, and in its place we find a deep sense of peace. We begin to see that silence is not empty. It is full of possibility, full of potential, full of the answers we've been searching for. Silence as a source of creativity. Many people think of creativity as something that requires constant stimulation and input. The more we expose ourselves to new ideas, the more creative we will become, right? But this view overlooks the importance of stillness in the creative process. Silence is the birthplace of creativity. In the quiet moments when we are alone with our thoughts, we allow our minds to wander freely. We create space for new ideas to emerge, free from the clutter and noise of daily life. When we embrace silence, we make room for our intuition to guide us. Creativity is not a product of force or will. It is a product of being receptive to the subtle nudges and inspirations that arise when we are quiet and still. In silence, we tap into the deeper well of our subconscious, where all of our untapped potential resides. By cultivating silence, we open ourselves up to a wellspring of ideas, insights, and innovations that we might otherwise overlook. The courage to be alone. Silence and solitude are deeply interconnected. To truly embrace silence, we must also learn to embrace solitude. In solitude, we are confronted with our own thoughts, our own desires, and our own fears. We no longer have the distractions of other people or the noise of the world to hide behind. Solitude at first may seem daunting. It forces us to face ourselves without the comfort of external validation. But in this solitude, we discover something essential. We are enough just as we are. The courage to be alone is the courage to accept ourselves fully, without the need for external approval or validation. It is the courage to sit with our discomfort and find peace in our own company. In solitude, we are free from the expectations of others. We are free to pursue our own path, to follow our own inner compass, and to create the life we desire. The journey towards self-mastery. Self-mastery is not a destination. It is a journey. It is the ongoing process of learning, growing, and refining ourselves in every moment. At the heart of self-mastery lies the ability to master our thoughts, emotions, and actions. This requires us to develop a deep sense of awareness of our triggers, our desires, and our impulses. As we cultivate this awareness, we begin to make better choices. We start to recognize when we are about to react impulsively and when we need to pause and reflect. We learn to trust our intuition and to act from a place of clarity and strength. Self-mastery is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about taking one step at a time toward becoming the best version of ourselves without judgment or self-criticism. The path to self-mastery requires us to confront our weaknesses and our limitations. It requires us to face the parts of ourselves that we may have been avoiding. But in doing so, we become stronger, more resilient, and more aligned with our true purpose. Embracing the silence of the soul, the silence we seek in the external world, is simply a reflection of the silence within our own souls. To truly master silence, we must first learn to listen to the quiet whispers of our own hearts. In the silence of our souls, we find the answers to our deepest questions. We discover who we truly are, what we truly desire, and what we are meant to create in this world. By embracing the silence within, we learn to live from a place of authenticity and alignment. We no longer need to seek external validation because we have found our worth in the quiet of our own hearts. It is in this silence that we find true freedom, the freedom to be ourselves, to live according to our own values, and to walk the path that is uniquely ours. The power to create in silence. Silence is not merely about passive reflection, it is also the space in which we create. In the quiet moments, we find the strength to pursue our passions, to bring our visions to life, and to manifest our deepest desires. The power to create in silence comes from the deep, knowing that we have everything we need within us. When we are still, we can hear the calling of our purpose, and we can take aligned action to bring our dreams into reality. Creation arises from the space of nothingness, from the void of silence. In this silence, we find the potential to transform our inner vision into something tangible and meaningful. And so must we. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read your experiences and reflections. And if this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe. It's important, much more than you imagine. And trust me, The journey we're on together is just getting started. The next videos are going to go even deeper, so stick around. You won't want to miss what's coming next. See you soon.